Welcome to DevOps Accents, a podcast on everything around DevOps, public cloud, and cloud-native topics, with your hosts, Pablo, Leo, and Kirill.
Hello and welcome to another episode of DevOps Accents, a podcast where we, the co-founders of MKDev, get together to discuss all things around DevOps and cloud-native technologies with our delicious accents. Today, we are together with Pablo. I don't exactly remember which episode that. Pablo, what's the episode?
24 or 25, if I am not wrong.
Okay, Pablo doesn't remember either. That's okay. We will figure this later. And today, we have another guest for you, but not just another guest. It's a very special person that we met during one of our conferences. Do you remember, guys? I keep saying this. Visit those conferences. They're very important for you, for your networking. This is another example of how important it is because this is Dotan Horovits with us today. Hi, Dotan.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Leo. Hi, Pablo. Thanks for inviting me. Glad to be on the show.
A pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. So for those who don't know, Dotan is a tech expert with over than 20 years in the industry, specializing in software development, product management, and excelling in cloud solutions and DevOps. Dotan is a renowned figure serving as an ambassador for the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and actively involved in various tech communities. He's a familiar face at DevOps conferences. If you ever visited one, you probably saw him on stage. He's known for his engineering talks, blog posts, and podcast on observability topic. Currently, he is our principal developer advocate at Logs.io, continuing to influence the tech world. We are digging deeper today. So this is Dotan for you guys.
And we met on one of the conferences. I was a speaker at, what was that? Was that KCD Munich, I think, which was the place where we met?
Yes. Yes, it was that one.
Yeah, we couldn't resist to invite you to discuss everything. So, Dotan, my first question, it's a bit of a tradition today, but what's your accent?
My accent?
Yes.
Well, I'm based in Israel, so I assume that many would assume that my accent is Israeli. I guess a Sabra accent.
Do people usually recognize it, notice this, or even commented on that?
Sometimes, I don't know. I'm not sure that everyone recognizes the accent or knows where it's from. Some ask, some assume that it's from other places. But yeah, I guess it's a good icebreaker in some cases.
Yeah, I agree. So, guys, this is another accent in our collection of DevOps accents. So, tell me, like, how you end up where you are today. I mostly, probably most of our listeners and myself included are interested how it happens that a person that is so tech organized and with this kind of mind that tries to dig deeper end up influencing the community. How this happens, instead of just work, instead of just trying to build new tools, at some point you decide, I need to spread the word. I need to educate other people. What happens with you that you decided to do that?
That's an interesting question. It obviously I grew up from engineering, many years of development, software development, primarily back-end style development. And I guess at some point I just found myself naturally guiding fellow engineers and connecting the dots, let's put it this way, in many respects, which led me, I guess, to an architect position, a systems architect, systems engineering, which is more systematic, let's say, and it's part of the role. And then from there, I started also working as a solutions architect and working as a consultancy fashion with users. So actually helping users design and implement solutions that will best fit their own needs, their own restrictions, their own criteria, and organizational structure and so on. So I guess this was the place where I found a way to use my technical background together with my I guess, will to bring things together and make elegant solutions together. And then it led me to a product management role, where again I found a place where I can bring the needs and the technology together to a place where it's best suitable for people, but for development platform, but development tools. So even that was like products that were platforms in essence. And I guess in the past good few years, it's more of the what people now call developer advocacy, developer evangelism, technology evangelism, which is back in the day I used to do that before they actually had the term for that, I guess, as a solutions architect, a consultant. But now they have a title for that. They have a methodology, so that's where I focus.
What do you do exactly in this role? Because to me, evangelist is like a person who runs around the company and preaches about how certain tools and instruments and programming languages are necessary, are convenient, and everybody should do that. So how it works in your case?
So first of all, most of my work is actually outbound. So I'm less running around the office in my company and actually running more around outside. And that includes a large variety of things. I speak at conferences, as the same as the Kubernetes Community Days in Munich, where we met, and many others, KubeCon and Open Source Summit and others. But also on much smaller events, meetups, also online. I have a very active blog, personal blog, and on the company's blog, I share different materials and articles. I just actually saw an article of mine posted today at DevMio about open source. I just tweeted about that. So I guess the idea is to use any means possible to reach out to the developer audience, DevOps audience, both to share knowledge, information, best practices, tooling advice and similar, but also for me, very importantly, it's a bidirectional channel. So also bringing back the feedback, what I hear from the needs, the pains, where it doesn't fit well, where there's friction, also bring it back to see how we can improve that as a company, for the company I work for, logs.io, but also for the open source projects under the CNCF, or as practices or as open standards and similar. So that's really in essence what developer advocacy is for me.
So basically this is kind of disguised marketing. Because while you are giving the talks, while you are training other people, you basically tell them about the tools, about the tooling, the necessity of the whatever things you are doing, and thus you basically increases the reach that your company can spread around.
Actually, I don't see it as marketing, if you already commented on that. I do think that it is very much a necessity for any marketing, for any company that is at least dev tooling space to have this function. But I don't see that as, at least not as a traditional marketing, because traditional marketing is about putting the slogans and seeing how best to sell and to promote your product. I think developer advocacy comes from a very different place. It comes from a place of sharing knowledge about bringing actually value to the developer, to the DevOps, to the user. And obviously, as a side effect, if someone sees value and sees the benefit, he or she hopefully will start using the tool. But first of all, many of my blog posts and articles and talks are actually about open source, not about our Logs.io's product. Now, Logs.io's product is based on open source, so you could say in an indirect manner, I do help the company also in that sense. But when I help people understand what OpenTelemetry is about, or how Prometheus works, or Jaeger, things like that, it's definitely not the traditional marketing. Let's put it this way. But it's about, for me, it's about actually first bringing value to the users, sharing knowledge, best practices, and explanations. And secondly, as I said, to also be open to hear and to learn what are the gaps and where we can improve.
And even that, not only you, most of the Avocado developers, they only have a little logo in the slides.
Yeah.
And because at the end, in most of the cases, this person is not co-founder or part of the company. In most of the cases, he is a person like you who can speak perfectly, who is able to talk with people, to be able to spread the knowledge. But the company paid to them everything. But really, you are the ambassador of the company. But in your case, for example, you are not the ambassador of the company. You are the ambassador of CNCF. and many other themes. So at the end, it's marketing, Leo, but it's not this direct marketing. Could be more indirect because there are very famous avocado developers in the world, and everyone knows in what company this person is working, but they never talk about the company normally. It's something like, as Dotan is telling, is talking about something different that can be used by the company. Yes, of course. Okay, he's not going to be talks about AI today. Maybe in 2, 3 months or 6 months, he's talking about what he's working. For example, traceability. Many other things. This is the way how it's working.
Yeah.
Okay. To me, as a marketing guy, everything looks like a commercial, like an advertisement opportunity. Like if you are a hammer, everything looks like a nail to you, right? Okay, because I'm looking at this from my point of perspective, because I remember when Kirill and I started, mostly Kirill, started create those amazing educational articles on general topics. And we've been discussing with him why we are doing that, why we're spreading them. Basically, for us, it was like, hey, look at us, we are the clever guys. If you have a questions, instead of asking somebody else, ask us. And this is how it works for us, even though those articles, or even on general themes, they mostly serves this exact purpose. But I don't think that Kirill see this that way. And too bad he's not here with us again. But anyway, I've been talking to a lot of experts, right, who likes to create those articles, who writes to publish, and I've been asking them, why are you doing that? And most of them have this, I don't know how to call it, itch or an urge to share this knowledge. And I always been wondering where this came from. Why do you need that? Like, do you really care about the community so much? And do you really care about how the community works, which direction it chooses in its own development? Do you really care about that, Dotan?
Yeah, I actually am very passionate about this topic, which is why I guess I chose, in my case, Logs.io as to work to take their offer and join them, because in my case, open sources and DevOps are both very topics very near and dear to my heart. And when I found a company that is aligned in its strategy, where they will actually pay me.
Pragmatic reason.
To, as you said, to talk about the same topics that I'm passionate about. Even with their blessing, I started my podcast, Open Observability Talks. So, by the way, I invite all of your audience, which obviously likes a podcast, to join Open Observability as one word, Talks. It's on all the popular platforms and also on YouTube.
Guys, you will find the link in the description.
Yeah. So with their blessing, talking exactly squarely about open source DevOps observability, and by the way, not about Logs.io. Obviously, when I discuss discussions like that, and I can bring some inputs from what we do as an engineering organization, or the difficulties or choices we made, I'm not shying away from that, but it's not about Logs.io as a company or about the Logs.io's portfolio. So I'm very passionate about it, and people also reach out to me. Just for example, just in the past month or 2 months ago, when HashiCorp decided to relicense, many people approached me for comment because they saw me commenting about this topic of relicensing and about the hazards of open source changing back from a few years ago already, when it happened with Elasticsearch and then with Grafana and others. So naturally, I'm finding myself proposed the interview that I just told you that was published this morning about these topics. So I guess one thing leads to another about the topics that I'm passionate about, and I find myself either I'm looking for places where I can share my knowledge, or people actually reaching out to ask for comments, for advice, and it just rolls as in that nature.
One question. So now that we started to talk about that. So all of us, we know how important is the observability, and all of us, we know how important is all this, how to, let's say, for the people that does not understand that, how to track what is happening in the machine, how to understand what is happening. And all of us, we know, there are two main tools that appeared in the market many years ago, Grafana, Prometheus. okay, Prometheus mostly, and then Grafana, the way to show everything, that, let's say, change the way that the things can be done. Always we had the observability, there were monitors and many other tools. It's not something that appeared after Grafana and Prometheus, everything appeared. It's not like that, but okay, it was like the boom. Because even it was open source, and it was, let's say, a way to open a main door. But how important is that in everything, in a pipeline, in day-to-day basis? How important is that? And how, for example, tools like Losted are able to help other companies, because that there are plenty of observability tools in the market today. So one more famous than another, but
yeah.
Why this is so important? Because for me, I think this is the main question of this topic. Why you are here, for me, because I want to discuss about that.
Certainly, but one comment, it's very important to say that with all due respect to Prometheus and Grafana and the hype around them, we've had, even in the open source, by the way, realm, very successful projects. Yeah. You probably remember Graphite, for example, that is also an open source and predated these stacks and was very, very popular in StatsD for collecting. And that was like the de facto standards back in the day, like StatsD for collecting, and then Graphite for storing the time series data and for visualizing. So I think open source has been a significant pillar of, back then it was monitoring, less about observability, from early days. What I think is critical here, everyone understands that you need to monitor your system, okay? Our businesses, as IT organizations, is all about making sure that we're up and running and serving and performant. And if someone takes 1 second or 2 seconds to complete the login, it will just switch off to another service. Or if the checkout cart takes 5 seconds to roll there before it checks out, okay, bye, I'll just shop from someone else. So it's very easy today to switch, and this is why you want to excel. And excel means that you need to be obviously without downtime, but also performant. And meeting your SLOs, service level objectives. And the thing is that while monitoring used to be, I guess, a simpler thing back in the day when systems were more monolithic, because you had the fixed set of failure modes that you needed to align to, and then you could just make sure that you cover them with proper dashboarding and alerting, and you had a way to handle that. And then it was considered, a sysadmin issue and operations and stuff like that. Today, it's a whole different ballgame. The systems today are much more complex, thanks to the containerization with Kubernetes and everything, thanks to microservices architecture that has become so popular. And with all the advantages that these architectures have and possess, with the flexibility, different teams advance in different speeds and the different maybe programming languages and different choices of databases. So this decoupling is fine, but then it added a tremendous layer of complexity when it came to monitoring the systems, both on the infrastructure side and even more so on the applicative side. You mentioned about monitoring the servers and the infrastructure. I think actually the application side is much, much more challenging. There it's really open-ended. Each microservice having its own endpoints, and then you need to have all the interactions between the microservices and all the failure modes. It's just a whole mess. I can elaborate more, but this is in essence why today the need for monitoring and more so observability is much more acute in my sense.
Because I think that you give a very important key, that is when all these, let's say, containerization, all these containers and all these later on appear, the microservices appear in the market. Because if we remember, all guys like me before the 2000, when there were only, and even in 2010, in many places yet, you have only the front end, and maybe one backend, maybe in some cases, because not always there were one backend, and you have the backend, and maybe in some cases even the front end, backend, and the database, and all these three components in this trio was the application, an application that was running and doing everything. And this is what you need to have. So it's these components, and even in case I have a database, it was a replica active-passive, the same thing with the backend, active-passive. So in these cases, really, I remember that the monitoring tool Tivoli and many other tools, this monitoring way to understand if something was down, it was a pin, because the front end was, you detect if something was wrong, if there is a pin. In some cases, you were checking the memory, but you know that the people says, okay, the CPU needs to be used because this is the reason, because you pay the CPU. And the other third point that you were tracking, it was the memory. Okay, if you memory, there is a memory leak or memory heap. Okay, and that's all. So, and then because it was complex, because when you have this monster monolithic all together, it is complex to track that monster, but it was simple at the same time, because the problems were located in few places. But then all this infra chain, and then you start to have one entry point. You have, for example, there are people who convert one monolithic to 200 microservices, and now you have 200 bubbles, and maybe the entry point is only 1 or 2. And then in the middle, you need to track many things. If the data are moving currently from one monolithic to another, you need to check all these components. And the amount of the complexity that you're telling me is crazy. And I think that this is one of the main reasons, because we had this boom with the tools that it was tracking what was happening, Because the world changed. And there were a need that it wasn't there, and then we changed the architecture, and then the need appeared. But now these days, what you can do with these tools is amazing. Because you can check at the minimum level, and even the performance that is required is nothing. It's something crazy.
Do you think your project infrastructure is well set and maintained? We know for sure there is always room for improvement. If you are uncertain where to begin, let's first do an audit of what you already have. We will review your setup from every angle: performance, cost, security, high availability, and automation, and provide you with a detailed roadmap of which direction your infrastructure should go, generate concrete tasks for you to implement, or even take on your infra entirely, if you let us, of course.
I have a question, guys. One question. I'm not a very clever person, but I guess you will be able to answer that. I assume something happened historically that today we have an observability or monitoring tools as something separate instead of embedded into a basic tool in general. For example, I don't know how to explain. For example, let's take my phone or your phone. We have so many different apps, and each app has its own notification. And you know that whenever happens inside of your app, it sends you a notification into your notification center. But when something wrong happens inside of your infrastructure, and the more components of infrastructure you have, the more failure points you have. And whenever happens there, you need an indication that something wrong happened there. And for that, you use an observability tool or a monitoring tool. So my question is, why instead of, for example, Kubernetes or Docker sending you this kind of notification that, hey, dude, something's broken, we need to rely on a third-party tools to tell us that something wrong inside of Kubernetes. How this happens historically? Or maybe it's working entirely different, and I just want to understand it.
So I can try and answer, and obviously, Pablo, if you have anything to add. But I would say that you need to think about Kubernetes more like an operating system. So an operating system provides you with the underlying facilitation to orchestrate your containerized workload. Okay, your application, deploying it as pods onto nodes, and do that thing. Part of that facilitation is also helping you to expose different types of telemetry, whether metrics, logs, traces, and similar. So, but it's not a comprehensive solution for the backend analytics. So the Kubernetes can help you in many respects to expose some of that telemetry. You still need to send that telemetry off to a certain backend that will then serve you to store it over time, to analyze it, maybe to fetch alerts, calculate and trigger alerts over this data. So just like any big data solution for that end, okay? So you have something that emits the data, which in this case could be Kubernetes is one of them. Not everything is Kubernetes and not everything is even containerized, as we mentioned, but you still need the solution to gather, to store, and to analyze the data. And this is, I think, where the vast range of observability solutions come into play.
So basically, this happens because they have their own, as you said, telemetry, but it is up to you and it's up to other application to give its interpretation, because you have your different tools, different applications, and everyone consider load or overload differently, and it's up to you how you interpret the data that comes from containers or other application. And basically they all allow other companies to do that and to let their users use their data, if this makes meaning, I mean.
Actually, I would say more than that. Even the companies that provide you with the tooling, they don't interpret the data. Ultimately, you need to understand your architecture, your system, and in some company, a certain signal might be considered erroneous or problematic, and for you, it could be the steady state. So I don't know, for you, you get exceptions from this microservice every day, 100 times, and that's your normal, and you know that your system keeps on running and functioning, and nothing goes wrong with that. And another company, once they see one exception like that, they will blow off their minds and they will immediately jump on that, because this will stop. So I think the tooling is an enabler, as I said. This is the part where you store and analyze the data, but ultimately, whoever does the analytics is you. It's your system. You know the workloads that you run. You know what's normal and what's not normal. And you are also the one to determine what are the service level objectives are, the SLOs. So what is the KPI, the indicator that says my system is up and running and functioning as expected? And as long as these SLOs are fine, the rest might be even noise. So, and then we're flooded with data. As I said, it's a big data thing. So the important thing is the insights out of the data, and the insights should be driven by what's meaningful for you. And what meaningful for you usually is formalized as in the form of SLOs, as I said, service level objectives and so on. But just to strip off all the terms, just think about what's important for your business. For example, I gave examples of, okay, if a customer cannot log in, or if a customer cannot complete the checkout from shopping cart, or I don't know what, this is meaningful for you. But you can have a gazillion, CPU spikes and errors and exceptions that might not impact in any way the service. So are they a problem? Are they not a problem? These are the sorts of questions that usually arise. Pablo, you probably have some more insights from your experience as a consultant.
No, I have many insights of that. But, I have a question that I always try to make to everyone who is related to this part of the market, let's say. And my question is, and all of us, we know what happened with Datadog and these 65 millions. I was checking the number because I don't remember if it was 50 or 60 million. And this problem with the 65 millions per year invoice that they have with, they always tell that it's a Bitcoin company. All of us, we know that it's Coinbase, but nobody never know that, but and the question is, how is possible that a company needs to spend 65 million? Like, we know that this is an exaggerated case, but my point is, why is so expensive to have observability? Because many cases, sometimes, you decide not to have, I've been in many projects that they decide not to have observability, or go directly to Prometheus and Grafana that is not giving to you anything. Because really, if you compare what a tool like Logset can give to you with what Grafana can give to you, is nothing. It's like I have a ball pen and I start to paint myself, or I have Michelangelo painting something. It's completely different topic. But why so expensive? Why everything is? Why this is happening?
So first of all, I can't comment on how Datadog reached this astronomical bill, but I can tell you that
you
the
can't
cost of
I don't know.
I'm not in the internals. I read, just like you, the news about this. It came out as part of their fiscal reports.
Yeah.
Fine.
Like it was
Keep
hidden
your
inside their CFO. The CFO actually spat it out, but he said it in a slick way. And one of the analysts was sharp enough to do the math in the with a pen and paper, and realize that this amounts to a single customer that is accounted for like 65 billion, as you said. A million, sorry. So, but I think the problem is that observability can be expensive for the mere reason that, as I said, observability is ultimately a data analytics problem, just like I said before. And data analytics problem, one of the problems of data analytics is that it's big data. It's lots of data that you collect and that you store and that you analyze, and that can blow up very, very easily. It could be, if you look at Datadog and many of these, that is the bread and butter, obviously, around logging, and logs are very verbose. It's textual. Unfortunately, I'm one of the ones who advocate for logs to change, but logs are still traditionally just texts, long strings of text with lots of information, but very, very heavy to store. And secondly, then you have even things that people treat as cheap, like metrics that are just numerical data points. They can also explode very easily. We talked about the shift to microservices architecture and containerized workloads. One of the things that this caused is an explosion in the number of dimensions of the metric. So if before you used to have, actually, if we go back to the graphite days, they didn't even have labels. They have it in a hierarchy, if you remember this structure of metrics, because it was so simple. So you could say, okay, I have a server. Inside the server, I have this application running. Inside the application, maybe I have an endpoint, and you have a very clear hierarchy. Today, it's a mess. Today, first of all, one of the successes of Prometheus was shifting to a different model that is labels. So you have a metric and then an arbitrary list of labels. And the labels could be anything. It could be the namespace, the cluster, the node, the whatever. And because of the complexity of the architecture, you get lots of labels and you get the high cardinality problem. And that people don't understand that. Like a developer sees, okay, hey, I haven't covered this, and I got, let's say, they had an issue, and the root cause analysis showed that some monitoring was missing. So the developer went in and added the label. They didn't realize that adding a label actually adds a dimension across all of the matrix. So it exponentially spikes all the metrics, okay, that are impacted by an additional dimension. This is a high cardinality problem. I had actually an entire episode in my podcast in Open Observability Talks just about the cardinality problem and how expensive metrics could be. And this is why we today need to take under advice things that we didn't need to do it back in the 2000s that you mentioned before, Pablo, about being cognizant of the volume of data and the value of the data, and making sure that the signal to noise ratio, as I call it, makes sense, because we gather way too much data. And the fact being that in most organizations, and I see that day in and day out, the vast majority of the data is never, ever put to use. Like, you can check, metrics from one of your customers or any user that you choose, and you'll see that like around 70%, if not more, of the metrics are never put to use in any dashboard or any alert rule or anything else, essentially. So why are we gathering and storing this time series data unnecessarily? And that's just metrics. And the logs are even more verbose and more noisy. Some people even gather debug logs that you obviously don't need under normal circumstances. So a lot of inefficiency comes from just not understanding and taking the safe route of, okay, let's keep everything because we don't know when we'll use it. And then they pay the price.
Every time that we do a cost audit in any of our customers, always the first thing that we go is to the metrics, because when you're in the metrics, you discover always thousands of euros that you can save. But even, and I know that this is not your part because this is economics, but if you check, for example, I was checking now the gross margin of, I check in Datadog because Logset is not public company, but this is the only reason, and the margin is 81% in the last quarter. And the margin of Microsoft is 71. So this is 81, this is 71, and Amazon is 17%. So what I mean is that the margin of these companies is huge, So
Pablo, I think we are in the wrong market, you and I.
No, I think that every sector has a different margin because it's working in a different way, and it's not only this company; it's every company, because the margin depends of the position of the company in a market, and how open is the market. If the market is super full of companies, you need to reduce the margins. Everything depends, and if you're working retail like Amazon, you need to go to the down margin because the problem is not only the goods, is that you need to give the goods to the people and then reduce the cost because many other things. But the point is, and knowing that the problem for many companies is that okay, and I start to make metrics and themes that I don't need to do, and this is adding and adding. It's the same thing happening in the cloud. When you start to check all these costs in the cloud, you discover hundreds of machines always that are up in my for 3 years. I don't know, sorry, I started this one to meta test. Yes, but come on, please, this is 10,000 per year. It's a lot of money because one by one. And I see that many people is doing that, but even in many cases, I can see many customers, and this is to like an advice that they're telling, I would like to have observability at this level, but we cannot include, this level of cost in the tool. But it's something that everyone wants to have. Everyone. So this is the beautiful girl that everyone wants to sit together and to talk to her. But sometimes it's super expensive.
Yeah. And I can tell you that, first of all, that's the birthplace of FinOps. FinOps comes exactly from the pain that you discovered, so that you described very, very nicely now. And this has become a very hot topic precisely because of what you said. Of course, obviously, the financial global economic situation made it even more of a primary concern to all the engineering organization to become more efficient. But this is FinOps in a nutshell. And I can tell you that this is something that I also see as a significant part of observability. I actually talked about it. I talk about it in many places. I talked about it and I wrote about it already a few years ago before it was so hype around FinOps. And even recently, I had again an episode on my show that I dedicated for FinOps observability based for FinOps use cases. And there are also solutions, I'm glad to say, again, as a CNCF ambassador and as an open source enthusiast, that there are initiatives like OpenCost that aims to provide an open standard or open specification for how to define cost, FinOps related cost, and how to externalize it in a uniform manner. And then once we have such a standard, it will be fairly easy for tools to then ingest this sort of data schema and then provide the backend to analyze it. The problem is that today when you download from AWS, you get the very high-level report that doesn't tell you anything, and then you get a very, very detailed report that tells you too much information, and anyway mapping the specific instances that you saw to specific teams that you have inside the organization that you need to understand, okay, so which team, which product line, which business group or whatnot is in charge, and how to attribute the cost to specific products or business units is very, very difficult. So I think there's a lot to be done. There's also, by the way, the FinOps Foundation, FinOps organization that is an open source organization squarely around FinOps. Mm-hmm. So lots of initiatives around trying to create, a common language with which we can describe our workloads, and also solutions like KubeCost, the people who came up with OpenCost as well, that focus on Kubernetes observability and understanding this complexity around containerized workloads. So lots of solutions that come to try and tackle this. And even at Logs.io, we have quite a few use cases that are aimed to provide observability around the financial aspects.
Yeah, it's super interesting, but at the end, again, I think that for the people this is the main topic always. When we talk with customers, they always tell to us, wow, we want to have that, but it's like the dream, no? As soon as I get another VC or these companies introducing money, this is the next thing that we are going to do. But really, I recommend to the people that they not use these kind of tools normally daily, to check what they can do. Because it's not like it was at 5 years ago or 10 years ago when you have these graph themes and that's all, something like that. No. It's even when you're coding, you need to introduce the inside the code, the connection with the metrics to be able to send the metrics. So, these days when you're coding with the capacity to send metrics to Logs.d or whatever other tool, and how these tools change the way that we are understanding everything. Because it's crazy. For me, it's one of the main key changes so I think that microservices is there, but microservices is able to be there thanks to observability, because there is no way to have microservices without observability. It's one without the other. And everyone is talking about something, but not everyone is talking about the other side. And I think that we need to give thanks to everyone who is working there, because the things that you are achieving is crazy, and to the level of the details and even many times, for example, you think, do I need service mesh? And you say, why I'm going to need service mesh if I have an observability tool? Because what the service mesh can provide to you, at the end, you're reaching the same level of themes, or even much, much better without service mesh and without adding a new layer of complexity to my network and to my user. It's crazy expensive.
Yeah.
But okay. But it's crazy good,
I agree. By the way, service mesh is a very, very hot topic, and funny you mentioned that, because actually in 2 days from now, I'm going to have a dedicated episode, my show specifically on Istio and on service meshes. Lots of news came out from KubeCon around that, and lots of developments. It's now a graduated project. So definitely agree with you. And going back to the cost that you mentioned, I think this is something that I can share with you also from our engineering, that we've experienced this bloat in observability costs, and also from our users. And maybe unlike some others that you mentioned, Datadog and others that base themselves on the data volumes, we actually made it our mission statement to actually reduce the volume and make it actually increase the signal to noise ratio. So we actually help. For example, you get a view, just imagine that you get a view of all your metrics, and you can see metrics, and for each metric where it's being used or if it's not used anywhere. And then with the tick of a button, you can just remove a metric that you see that is not used everywhere. So even first of all, the observability of understanding, you observe it into your cost. Hey, I'm not using this metric anywhere, and this metric also has like 56 dimensions, labels. Maybe I should remove that one. That's to make it easy. Is vital. So this is for metrics, or for logs, for example, the ability to actually roll up logs into metrics. So many actually use logs, consume logs, actually as metrics. Like think about access logs, and then you monitor the HTTP return code or error code, and just see, hey, suddenly I have a spike in the 404s or 503s or whatnot. So you don't actually read the full access log. You just look at one part of the log that is the HTTP error code, let's say.
Yeah.
So why not? And you build a Kibana visualization that shows you that as a graph. So why store the raw logs when you can actually roll them up into a metric, a numerical metric, which is much, much more efficient, and just keep that metric that is also easier to analyze a trend over time with PromQL and similar like you do for any metric. And that's much, much cheaper. So you throw away the logs, or maybe put them in an S3 bucket or something like that, like a cold storage, and only keep the metric that you roll up on the fly from the log. So lots of these sorts of solutions that allow our users to actually find what's the benefit that the log or metric or trace provide, and focus on these parts of the benefit and drop the rest, or drop altogether, or put it in a cold storage that you can then fetch again if you need it, I don't know, for compliance reasons or audits or something like that once every blue moon. So these are the sorts of things that we actually put a lot of emphasis as a company, as a product, to make it easier for our users to be more efficient, more insightful with a lower cost, or lower volumes of the observability data telemetry.
Guys, I have the last very short question. While listening to you, I think about like this industry is so cool. Like there's so many things going on, and the question is, can you learn to be an observability manager or something like that? Like to be hired in the company, to get access to all this data, all these metrics, and just look at it and to tell them what is broken, what works fine, where the money goes or not, or you have to be a developer to be able to understand that. I mean, should each individual developer track their own data, or can I be this observability manager and oversee them all?
Wow, that's a very, very good question, because the answer is it depends. And the reason it depends is that it depends on what you monitor. I think, and this is my personal belief, that each developer needs to monitor certain telemetry based on the microservice that he or she develops and things like that. So developers need to monitor, yes, but it doesn't exclude the central entity. Usually it's types of DevOps. In bigger organizations, you actually have maybe shared services team or platform engineering teams, depending on the names or whatnot. And you also wrapped around inside your question also the FinOps aspect. So in many companies, FinOps is yet another function that works closely with DevOps, obviously, but it is designated specifically for FinOps. So you have a combination of central people, usually from DevOps/FinOps, sometimes DevSecOps if it's security related, that give the central entity, but it's also the distributed per team. It could be a DevOps that sits together organically within a squad and provides this insight within the development team. It could be the individual developer that needs to monitor specific metrics about the successful rollout of a new build. So you roll out as a developer. We used to be in the old times, okay, you rolled up a build, you threw it over the fence, and it was someone else's problem, operations team, to figure out if it works or not. And if it doesn't work, it's the proof, the burden of the proof was on them to tell you why it didn't work. Nowadays, that's the shift left movement, meaning that the developer owns all the way to production, and sometimes also day two. So he or she needs to see the successful deployment through the CI/CD pipeline, which also has observability on its own right. So you need observability into the CI/CD pipeline and the release cycle, and then into production. And so it's a combination of the developer, the DevOps embedded within the squads, and a central entity that manages. I hope I answered. I know it's all around the place, but it's really, really dependent.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you, Dotan. This was very insightful, and I think Logs.io are very lucky to have you inside the team. And I believe many of you who listens to us have many more questions to ask, because I do. And I recommend you to go into the description and to check the links. I will post everything there, and go to Dotan's blog and read to check on his talks around the conferences, and make sure you track where he gives his talk, and go there and visit it. You won't be disappointed, I can assure you. But anyway, guys, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us, Dotan.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Leo, for inviting me.
Pleasure, Dotan.
And for those who listen to us, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to give us likes and comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter, MK Dev Dispatch, where you can find everything new and everything, the most recent articles and videos that we are publishing. And once again, I remind you that we recently launched our MK Dev store, where you can go and purchase those awesome t-shirts, mugs, and hoodies with wonderful prints that you can see around our website, our videos, and you can have them on your t-shirts or a bag. Go in the description, check those links, and we will see you and hear you in the next episode. Bye-bye, everyone.
The cloud tech industry is evolving so fast. Do you keep up with it by improving your skills or upskilling your team? At MKDev, we offer a variety of workshops for just that, from the basics to expert knowledge. Before delivering our workshops and training sessions, we carry out a detailed assessment of each participant. To make sure the workshop is helpful for you and your team, we will add more content to it or throw out what you already know. Or we create a custom workshop specifically for the needs of your team and the specifics of your project.